jolly good.
Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clank Zoka, and welcome to another My Thoughts On. Today, I'm going to be talking about all, and I do mean this when I say all, the Ice Age sequels. I made a vote on one of my community posts saying which film should I do this. What should I do this week? Either the Tom and Jerry 2021 film, oh god, or the Ice Age sequels. And to my surprise, people wanted me to do the Ice Age the sequels first. I've already done the first Ice Age, which I really like, so I've got to do Ice Age 2, The Meltdown, Ice Age 3, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, Ice Age 4, Continental Drift, and finally Ice Age 5, Collision Course. So let's start off with Ice Age 2, The Meltdown, or Ice Age The Meltdown. However you want to put it, it's one or the other. This came out in 2006, and this was Blue Sky's third animated film after Robots. And then Ice Age came out in 2002, and this was the first sequel. I do remember watching it when I was young. I remember watching it in primary school. Basically, it's one of those it's one of those films that I think people would just remember for either watching it on DVD or I don't think VHSs were a thing at that point. I think they were dead because DVDs were coming in. But I think people just remember watching it on telly, like when they were young. And again, I watched this. Obviously, the first time I watched it was DVD. I think second time was at primary school. Like during half term, it's like, oh, let's put a movie on, and it's like Ice Age 2 was on there. I don't think the first one was at school, which is a bit strange. But anyways, this film is pretty split between critics and audiences. People liked it, and others just thought it was problematic. Me personally, well, I haven't watched it in like 8 years or like maybe 6 years. I don't remember. Anyways, so what's Ice Age 2: The Meltdown about? Well, it's about the original herd, Manny, voiced once again by Ray Romano, Sid, voiced once again, obviously, by John Leguizamo, and Diego, which is Dennis Leary. Um, the herd and the rest of these animals have to move because apparently there's a flood coming, and the reason as to why is never explained. And they have to move out, but at the same time, Manny starts to doubt whether he thinks he's the last mammoth. That is until he meets this other mammoth possum named Ellie, who's voiced by Queen Latifah, and her two brothers who happen to be possums. Crash, voiced by Sean William Scott from American Pie, and Eddie, voiced by Josh Peck from Drake and Josh and The Amanda Show. So they all have to tag along and basically try and make it out alive, while Manny tries to be nice to her and prove to her that she is in fact a mammoth, because Ellie was brought out as a possum. And obviously, it can't be an Ice Age film without Scrat, who's just doing what he usually does, is trying to bury his acorn. Okay, let's just get down what this film's biggest problem is that it's quite messy. What do I mean by that? Well, first off, the problem with sequels, especially animated sequels, is that there's too much going on. With the exception of Shrek 2 and Toy Story 2, Ice Age The Meltdown, I think, is probably the first animated sequel that's considered messy. I mean, there is a plot there, but there's also a subplot where Diego's trying to learn his fear of swimming because he's a tiger, and tigers and I guess feline cats don't like swimming. Then there's another one as well where Sid's just trying to convince Manny to go and see Ellie. Crash and Eddie are just trying to do this and that, and then there are these predator sea creatures going after them, and then the vultures are looking over them as well. There is quite a lot going on, and not all of it really connects well to the main plot. I think the main plot is just basically just trying to get out of the flood mainly, and then secondly it's just about if Manny's the last mammoth. And it's not very nicely connected, it's all just very loose and very all over the place. This is a very wild, all over the place film. The humour in the film is honestly just a bit of a mixed bag. There are some very funny slapstick moments and nice sarcastic humour which works, but then there are some like there's a dam joke because they're inside a dam, and then one of the beaver says "damn," and then there's a joke about a butt, and there's a bloody stomach joke as well, and then there's a reference joke where a character says "I believe I can fly," and then they know, and apparently they know what a dog and what singing is. This world's not very well established, I'll be very honest. The first film I thought was very well established in its world mostly, but this one's like it feels very inconsistent. Like we've seen the herd move from taking the baby back, and now they're with other animals. How did they find them? We do not know. And also the world building. At first, when you see these animals going down a water park, and the world building is not very well established. The film's just too fast and doesn't slow down to give you a breather. Every now and then it does, but mostly it's like whoosh, 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 whoosh. It's like on fast forward. The film doesn't give you breaks, it doesn't let you take in the atmosphere or the emotion. It's just like, no, we need more comedy. And yeah, I know it's a comedy, and it is funny for about, I guess, 60%, and the rest is just either too cringy or just not funny at all. And even then, the cringy humour is just noise. And I'll get to that in a minute with the characters, but let's just say it does get a bit very mediocre kids film stuff, and I wouldn't go as far to say it's a kids film, because there are a few scenes where there's even a scene where a character just dies off screen, and then there's like a couple of sweary bits, like when Manny's telling the story of the Russo. He's saying and I'll admit that bit made me laugh. But I was like, is it really necessary to make the character swear a little bit? He did say, yeah. And then there's a couple of uses of crap in there. And I don't mind when animated kids films, or kids films in general, use swearing, as long as it's not too much or anything like that. The stuff with Scrat is mostly entertaining, and it's the only part of the film that actually makes me just legit smile and laugh. It's really, really funny. Sure, it has nothing to do with the film, but it's enjoyable enough. And I'll give the film this as well. There are a couple of really nice moments, and even the third act is kind of when the film gets going, and it's actually when it gets better and slightly funnier as well. So there are good things in the film, and I can see this being a really damn good sequel, but it's just that it feels too much like your average animated sequel where there's too much going on and all of it doesn't feel connected well. It just feels very loose and just lost and very all over the place. I know all sequels do that, but it's just the problem when here they could have done so much more with what they can do with this damn sequel, and it doesn't even connect much to the first film except for what happened to Manny's family, and that's pretty much it. There's also the famous scene where Sid gets kidnapped by some fire sloths, mini sloths, and again, that's another scene that's also funny, but again, what's the point? And I found the answer. I don't know if it's correct, but here we goes. I think it's another one of those films where it just fills up filler just to fill up the runtime. Usually in some films they do a little bit of that. Toy Story 2 did that just a little bit with, the other Buzz, and Shrek 2 did with what's going on with the other minor characters, but at least it had something to do with the story, but not entirely, I should probably put it that way. But here, not really. Some of it's just random humour, and it's funny, but it just has nothing to do with what's going on. Despite some very nice, emotional, good scenes, and even though the backstory of Ellie is touching, it doesn't make a whole it doesn't make sense, I'll put it that way. It's a very messy backstory, and it just There's a lot of things that feel very loose and unfocused here, but when it does get good, it's when it's moderately funny. I laughed about maybe 5 or 6 times, and it has a nice emotional beat to it, and it is rather entertaining and very suspenseful. And the third act is kind of when the film got better, but unfortunately, it's not enough to say it's amazing, and I'll get to that at the end, of the rating, you know. But it's just very predictable. The humour's very modern and very fart humour, which makes it instantly unfunny as well. And it's just it's just unfocused, messy, predictable, and not interesting to follow at all. And there's just too much going on. It's not awful writing, but you can tell it's just a sequel just trying to do more than what the first film did, and it just kind of muddled it up a little bit to make it feel lost. Animation. The animation is one of the few things that this film does better than the first film. It's well animated, it's better with its textures, and the characters from the first film look a little better and different. It's more bright and colourful, I'll admit that, and the speed and the movement of the characters is really good. I love how Scrat moves in his very cartoony, wacky, slapstick way. It's wonderful. The new characters look pretty cool, like these two predators. I forgot what they're called. I think one's called Maelstrom and the other one's called Solitis. I think, I can't remember, but they have really cool designs and they move very ferociously as well. The vultures move in a very sleek and very villainous way as well. The slapstick cartoony humour, especially when Sid and Diego first meet Crash and Eddie, and they're trying to catch them. What's the fucking game called? You know that I can't remember the name. You know that game where you try and put your feet and hands on like coloured dots. It's kind of like that. I forgot the name of it. Sorry, but it's nice to look at. The texture's really good. Genuinely speaking, it's a pretty good looking film, but compared to what came out in 2006, like freaking Happy Feet and Cars and I guess Monster House, this film just looks good by comparison, but just not great. It looks better than Barnyard and freaking Over the Hedge, which looks good, but this film just looks more bright and colourful and nicely textured, I will admit. And the only issues I have is that it just looks quite average from 2006, and there's nothing really new or innovative about it. It's just a pleasant looking film. It may not be the best animation from Blue Sky, but hey, at least it's an improvement from the first film, I can say that. Characters and acting. The characters, honestly, it's hard to explain how I feel about them. The main characters from the first film don't really offer much, except for Manny, who's pretty much the main character of the entire series. He's still the lovable, sarcastic mammal we all know and love, and he is mammoth. He's still funny, and he has his quirky and sarcastic lines, and his delivery is very good, and his chemistry with Sid and Diego is pretty solid for the most part. Sid doesn't really do much, and he is still excuse me. Um, Sid's still funny, but he doesn't do much really, and he can be a little bit unnecessary. Diego is pretty much the straight man, and he's likable and easy to follow as well. He is quite charming, I do think. The new characters are honestly, there isn't too much to say about them. Ellie's just the female version of Manny. I mean, sure, she's likable and can be funny, but she's honestly just kind of a dumb, very nonsensical character. Like, she thinks she's a possum, which is a cartoon, and it's like, you got to accept the stupidness, but it is rather dumb when you think about that she is a mammoth and she's been raised by possums, and we don't even know too much about what's going on. Her flashback story, I guess, when she meets Crash and Eddie, I just wish there was actually more screen time so we know how she lost her herd or anything. But no, it's just she meets Crash and Eddie and that's it. There's not enough explained. I wish there was more to her, but the character's fine. It's just I wish there was more to her. Crash and Eddie are the worst characters in the film and pretty much the entirety of Ice Age. I'll be very honest. They're not funny. They're not likable. There's even a scene when one of them dies, and then on one hand it's good that one of them's dead, but then the other makes a big scene out of it. It's just they're noise, obnoxious, juvenile, reference humour, comedic characters. And as soon as we meet them, that's kind of when the film actually gets worse. But then they kind of sit back a little bit towards the third act, and actually all three of them is kind of what makes the film worse. Ellie's just kind of in the middle, and it's like she's not good, but I can tolerate her a little bit. But Crash and Eddie, no, they're just fucking annoying. Just seriously annoying. And the two main villains who are like these like sea creature predators. One of them's named Maelstrom, and I think the other one's like Cerritus. I think that's how you pronounce the other name. On one hand, they're just the basic predator villains who just wants to eat our heroes, but on the other hand, they are kind of cool and intimidating. And I am a little concerned as to why they don't talk, since the other animals do. If they did talk, you can give them really cool voices, but to be fair, they would be more reference pop humour, I suppose. But they're decent enough threats, and they're not as great as Soto or even freaking Captain Gut, or yeah, but they're decent. You've got Fast Tony, who's voiced by Jay Leno after his role, I think cameo role in Robots, and he's just basically just kind of there for humour, and he's there to tell the main characters what's going on, and pretty much the rest of the characters are just kind of there for gags and jokes. Except for Scrat, who has his own priorities, I think. And he's funny. He's still funny just as he was in the first film, and he never fails to make me smile and or laugh. It's just the little things that work. The voice acting is good. Not much else I can say about it. Ray Romano he fits Manny quite perfectly. John Leguizamo is fine. Dennis Leary is probably my favourite. Sean William Scott and Josh Peck, who play Crash and Eddie, as much as I think their characters are annoying, they are well performed. I will admit. And they do fit the roles of two very snooty, very annoyingly obnoxious possums quite well. Queen Latifah's actually not that bad as Ellie. Will Arnett, who we may know as BoJack Horseman and Lego Batman, voices the lone gunslinger Vulture, and according to Wired, apparently that was his first animated role, and it shows how he went from a small, slightly well, not small, but a very sequely mediocre film like this to something like the Lego Movie, Lego Batman, and even BoJack Horseman. He's great in this. Jay Leno's fine, and Chris Wedge, who's the founder of Blue Sky, voices Scrat, and he's pretty good as well. The characters may not be really anything special, and they're just kind of this and that, and not that interesting, with a few exceptions. But with the voice acting, that's actually not too bad. They're tolerable, but just if you don't include Crash and Eddie, the rest of the characters are fine. But Scrat is still great. The score of the film is not by David Newman, but by the composer who would compose the music for about, I guess, 70 to 80% of the films from Blue Sky, and that is John Powell. You may know him for How to Train Your Dragon and so many other animated scores. His score here is just as wonderful as How to Train Your Dragon. Not as good though, but hey, any film that's got his score in, instantly music to my ears. He is really, really great. Yeah, obviously I don't think it is as good as the first film, but it's okay. It's really just a really harmless family film that you can just put your kids in front of and they can just watch it fine. Ice Age 2 The Meltdown is nothing groundbreaking. It's no Toy Story 2 or Shrek 2 or any great sequel from the animation form, but it's fine. You know, the animation of the film is an improvement of the first film, and the characters, well, Diego and Scrat and just maybe a few others are entertaining enough, and the line delivery from the actors is pretty good. And the acting itself is good. The story is interesting enough, and it does have some good moments that I can see working if the film was better as a sequel, and it has some funny moments along with a nice score. However, with a very clumsy and very dumb but also very convoluted story that's all over the place, very juvenile, modern, gross humor and animation that looks quite standard compared to what came out in 2006, and some very annoying characters. The film just is just passed off as a very kid film, with the exception of a couple of swear words and even one or two characters that die. It is kind of a dark film, but not overly dark like Monster House or anything like that. So yeah, it's fine. I'll give the film. What did I give it last time? Need to have a look. I think at one point I gave it a 5, but I'm pretty sure it's a 6. So yeah, I'm gonna give the film a 6.5 out of 10. It's not great, but it's okay. Just a perfectly okay film. Just fine, you know. Okay, so that is the Meltdown done. Then on to now going on to the 2009 third sequel, which is titled Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Alright, on to Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs, which is the third Ice Age film and the second sequel. It came out in 2009. It is directed once again by Carlos Sadanos. Carlos Sadana. He directed the previous sequel, Ice Age The Meltdown. He would later direct Rio 2, and Ferdinand, and I can't remember what else he directed at Blue Sky, or anything else for that matter. He was also one of the directors of Rio, I Love You, and also Falling for Scrate, which is, I assume, the short for this movie. He also directed Gone Nutty, which is the first Ice Age short. He co-directed the first Ice Age film, and apparently he co-directed Robots. In this sequel, Manny and the gang have to go and rescue Sid from this dinosaur and its babies, and along the way they get help from this weasel named Buck, who is voiced by Simon Pegg. And they have to try and get there before the big beast of them all, Rudy. Now, I have actually seen this film about 3 or 4 times. First time I watched it was back in primary school, because I was about... When did this film come out? I know it came out in 2009. I think it came out July time? And it was almost up to my birthday. My birthday's in August, and I would have been about 9 when it came out. So I remember going to see this film when I was 9 with my primary school trip. We went to the View. It was quite nice, actually. It was a very nice trip out, I'll be very honest. And 2009 is actually one of my favourite years in terms of like childhood, and even films is actually very great. So I remember going to see this film. We went to the View, and it is the same View I go to, and it's actually still there despite, pandemic, but it should be open soon. I remember the trailers. I think Where the Wild Things Are was on there. I also remember the SpongeBob ident, the Pearl and Dean ident. I remember just playing the little tune that SpongeBob played after the film as well, and I remember really enjoying the film as well. That was a really cool trip. How cool is that? You get to go on a school trip to the cinema. That's fucking great. Anyways, enough about my childhood. I remember this film fairly well, and I had video games too, and I think I did pick up some toys as well. Oh, those were the good old days. Anyway, so is there anything that this film does better than the first sequel? I was going to say first film, wasn't I? First sequel, so last film. Obviously, none of these are going to be better than the first film, but um, I'll give this film a bit of credit. Right, this actually feels more like an actual Ice Age sequel than the last one, and although with dinosaurs, I guess it kind of makes sense. I don't really know how this prehistoric time worked with the Ice Age and the dinosaurs. I don't really know how it works, but hey, it's combined. Really, the idea of a underground dinosaur world above, where the you know mammals are in the ice. I thought that's quite cool. That's a really cool idea. Hell, if Ice Age didn't exist and this film was the only one, I think this could have been kind of decent actually. This could have been like a really solid film. Hell, even the whole idea of the dinosaur world and Buck the Weasel and Simon Pegg. If they made a film, if Ice Age 3, if this didn't exist, if Blue Sky just made a film just about Buck and nothing to do with Ice Age, I think this would have been fucking great. Not perfect, but great. But no, Ice Age is involved in there, so we have to talk about it. I'll say this, the opening to the film, if you exclude Scrat's subplot, which is actually to put the acorn on the ground, but also falls in love with another squirrel named Scratay. Or Scrathead, sorry. It's another one of those love interests that has the same name but has et in it because it's a female. Sexist. So in this film, Manny is expecting a baby from Ellie, and Diego just leaves because he's losing his touch, and then Sid, as the goofy dumb idiot, just finds 3 eggs, and they turn out to be dinosaurs. This is just like the last film. There's too much going on, and it feels very similar to any animated sequel with too much going on. And this is also another one of those animated sequels where whatever problems they have are easily resolved by what comes later and what part it plays, and also it just comes out of nowhere and they just use it again. The stuff with Sid is cute, amusing, but nothing too memorable. Although the fact that Ellie's having a baby is interesting at best, Diego's plot is just he's losing touch and he feels like he should leave the pack, and I kind of forgot, like, what was the point of that at all? Oh, wait, because he was having a baby, and it's like, can't be part of the herd. Okay, but that didn't really seem to go anywhere, and I mean, he did pick up his touch, he did become faster, and then slow down and lose his vision, which got a bit blurry, but then it was, like, kind of pointless. He seemed fine when he went down the underground dinosaur world. Manny's just kind of the same, being very snarky, sarcastic, and just being complainy as well. Scrat's stuff is funny as always. Honestly, they should just make a TV series with Scrat. I think that could have worked, or even its own movie. I mean, that wouldn't really work since Minions did that, and it was okay. But I think Scrat would have worked fine. But hey, I can't complain because he is great in all these films. I can't complain. However, the thing that makes this film even more better, that really saves it from being just meh, is when they go down the dinosaur world. This is when the film just gets better. When they meet Buck, when they find out that there's a bigger dinosaur than Mummy Dinosaur, named Rudy, and when it gets action-packed, creative, wild, wacky, cartoony, the film instantly just gets better. And that's when I thought, why didn't they have a separate film? One where, they could just go on an adventure just to, escape from some giant ice creatures, and then have one where Buck is just trying to save these 3 dinosaurs. Why couldn't there be a film separately just on this dinosaur world and Buck without Ice Age involved? That would have been so much better. But to the film's credit, it does get better, and it actually does pick up, and it doesn't feel like an Ice Age film anymore. It feels like Simon Pegg's film, really, and he's the one that really steals the show. The humour is slightly funnier than the first film, and even some of the characters aren't as annoying in the second film, I'll be very honest. There are some very obvious jokes, like the whole name of where they go. There's one called the Plates of Woe, where then Crash and Eddie go, whoa. The only reason why it's called that is just for them to go, whoa. But, yeah, it's a cartoon, I can accept that. There are a couple of, like, gross out humour and fart humour, and there's even one really funny, like, toxic gas scene that makes everyone laugh and their high-pitched voice goes up. That's pretty fucking funny. But Simon Pegg did kind of make that even better, to be fair. But everything else is just very standard British, very standard animation humour. That's like, you know, one character's very dismissive over the other, and one is dumb, and the other one is very pessimistic, and the other one's optimistic, really. Obviously, the film's predictable, but that's just standard, you know, sequel stuff. As an Ice Age sequel, and I guess as an Ice Age, excuse me, film in general, this just feels very by the numbers, been there, done that stuff. Yeah, it has, you know, the humour's slightly better, and it is more interesting and, you know, watchable. But when they get down to the dinosaur world, the film does eventually pick up and actually feels like a different film, but in a great way. But even with that, it doesn't really save the entire film completely. It's just that it just gets better. But the first, like, maybe 30 minutes, well, not horrible. It's just, I've seen this before and it just doesn't feel new. It just feels very repeated. But thanks to Wacky Weasel and some dinosaurs, it might just be the best sequel from Ice Age. Animation. The animation, once again, it gets better every time. The animation here is fantastic. Obviously, with what we're familiar with the characters and the Ice Age, it's a perfectly great looking film, but when they get down to the dinosaur world, the film instantly gets wonderful. I love Buck, okay? I love his design, I love the way he moves in a very wacky, speedy, cartoony, expressionable way. Like, he is one of the most wonderful looking animated characters I've ever seen. He's so amazing. He's just so full of energy as well. And you know, the animation cartoony slapstick with Scrat and all that is also really good as well. And the stuff on Scrat and Scratette, and even the gags are really good. They're wonderfully animated and pretty funny, I will admit. And even Rudy and the Mama Dinosaur. Okay, Mama Dinosaur looks good, but kind of average looking. But Rudy looks fucking cool. Better than the Indominus Rex from Jurassic World. The background is quite gorgeous looking, and it's quite atmospheric. The textures are better. The new characters look cool. The baby dinosaurs look cute, but they're nicely designed. Manny is a pretty impressive looking mammoth, I'll be very honest. And Scratch and Eddie look fine. Diego looks pretty cool. Even the creatures they make down there are quite cool. Not much else I can say, really. The animation is just fantastic. It's just it shows that Blue Sky just improves with what they got. It just gets better and better. It looks amazing. The characters and the dinosaur world and Buck look absolutely just spectacular. And the animation, along with everything related to Buck and the dinosaur world, just makes this film an absolute blast to watch. Which is really saying something, because Ice Age genuinely looks great, but this one truly stands out as being the most awesome looking. Characters and acting. Okay. Let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Buck. Buck is my favourite character, not only in any Ice Age film, but one of my favourite animated characters of all time. He is funny, he makes no sense. He is dumb. He's crazy. He's badass. He's cool. But that's what makes him so enjoyable. I absolutely love Buck. One of my favourite animated characters of all time. He just makes this film just super fun. Hell, if no character was in this except for him, I would have just watched him just over and over again, and he steals the show. Absolutely. Scrat is still very funny also, and Scratette is a great supporting character and a good love interest slash nemesis. The main characters are fine. Manny's just the same, and there's nothing really new to him. Sid's the most amusing dumbass I've seen. Diego's, likable, and again, just like the last film, actually no, Manny, Diego, and Sid's chemistry, all of them, they have good line deliveries and good humour together. I think when it's them three, it really works. Ellie's fine. Flash and Eddie, I'll give them this. They're not as annoying in the last film, but you could have taken them out because they're quite pointless. Rudy, although pretty much like the last two villains as just being a predator, he is a very cool villain and even ties into the backstory of Buck. Although the backstory in Buck of how Buck lost his eye is really cool, I just wish there was more, not only to Rudy, but to Buck himself. I thought this is just really cool and really interesting, So Rudy, although not the best Ice Age villain, he's still pretty cool. The Mama Dinosaur is just another dinosaur character, but it turns out that she is kinda nice. And the three dinosaur babies are cute and kind of funny too. So the voice acting is still really good. Ray Romano fits Manny quite well. Dennis Leary is actually really good here as well. John Leguizamo's just fine. Queen Latifah's slightly better than she was before. Sean William Scott and Josh Peck are pretty good as they were before in the last film. Yeah, the last film. Sean William Scott, and Josh Peck as well. Simon Pegg is the best part of this. Well, the best voice performance in this film. I thought he was funny, charismatic, and also Simon Pegg's one of my favourite actors. So any role he does, whether the film's good or bad, well, except for absolutely anything, he just steals it, and he is fucking fantastic here. Absolutely amazing. And I can tell he really had fun voicing Buck. Just, oh god, just so amazing. Just, oh, fucking hell, so good. Everyone else does fine. Bill Hader actually has a very small role here, and hell, even Jane Lynch too. And also Jerry King. You've got a couple of recognisable names here, but don't play a big role as much as the main characters. But hey ho, they're here. That's all. Even though the characters from the previous films are they are there and they do have a good enough support, but they're just nothing special. The new characters is really what makes them stand out. Buck is amazing. The voice acting is actually still what makes these characters fun and likable. But it's just that the main ones are just not that interesting, and honestly, they're just very kind of one-dimensional, and their goals are just very, again, been there, done that, and it's resolved. But hey, at least they're likable and fun to watch enough, I suppose. On a side note, the score is by who else? John Powell, and it's once again I am a big fan of John Powell's score, big fan of his music, and it is fucking awesome here. It is wonderful. It is nice to listen to. It's just a genuinely nice score. I'd say I don't think it's as good as Meltdown and even freaking Continental Drift, but it is still atmospheric, still wonderful to listen to. Just another really, really good score. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, believe it or not, this is actually my favourite Ice Age sequel. I mean, it's not great, but it's pretty good. Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs is quite possibly the best Ice Age sequel. Not as amazing, or no, well, not as great as the first film, but it's a close second. The animation is breathtaking and full of great cartoony humour. Scrat is still very funny. Buck is my favourite character in the film, hands down. The ideas of this film could have worked so much better if it was just Buck in the dinosaur world. The main characters are still likeable and have good line delivery. The voice acting is pretty solid. The score by John Powell is amazing as always. The story's interesting enough, I suppose. And it is a very it is a well animated film, and it is a pretty decent watch. However, the film is still predictable, and although it is a little funny at times, most of the humour is just fart gags and just stupid shit. And the main characters are just kind of there, and they don't really change. They don't really learn that much, to my knowledge. If you like Ice Age sequels, I guess you'll like this one. If you're looking for a legit good Ice Age sequel, this is the one that you need to watch. If it wasn't for Buck and the Dinosaur World, then I think this would have been just fine. I gave it a 6 something last time. Let me have a look. Because I think this film has like... Oh, no, it has a 6.9. I thought it says like a 7 last time, from what I remember. But yeah, I'm gonna give the film... I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because it's not great, but I'm really glad I watched it. I really am. So we've just reviewed, well, I reviewed 2 sequels, one that's okay and one that's pretty good. However, both sequels are actually, these 2 Ice Age sequels I can pretty much watch anytime because I actually don't mind them. Which is pretty much the exact opposite case when it comes to these other 2 sequels. But first, let's start off with the 4th film and the 3rd Ice Age sequel that came out in 2012, and that is Continental Drift. Okay, Ice Age Continental Drift. This came out in 2011, and this was the first Ice Age film that people, or at least most critics and fans, I suppose, found very dismissive and very split upon this film. People either liked it because it's very nostalgic, or people like it because it's actually a good film, and others kind of don't like it because it's just messy, nonsensical, not all that funny, and just unnecessary. Does it really deserve the hate? Well, let's have a look. So the entire world is going to fall apart again, but thanks to Scrat once again. So our main heroes, once again, Diego, Manny and Sid, get separated from Ellie and their new child, who is Peaches. Now, Peaches is voiced by Keke Palmer, and they get separated and they have to try and get back home until they come across some more animals, led by a very fearsome, a very fearless pirate monkey named Captain Gut, and he's voiced by Peter Dinklage, along with a shabby crew of pirates, which is including Flynn, who's voiced by Nick Frost, Gupta, who's this like raccoon flag, who's voiced by Kunal Nair from Big Bang Theory fame, and Raz, who's voiced by Rebel Wilson, and they pretty much terrorize and try and just capture our main heroes until they meet up with one of their former crew members who quickly turns to their side, Shira, voiced by Jennifer Lopez, or J-Lo. And so they have to try and get back to the family while Captain Gut is out for his revenge. Oh, Sid's granny, voiced by Wanda Sykes, is there too. Okay, let's just get down to what this film does wrong. First off, this is another one of those films that emphasises on the 3D thing. You know, when films are made for 3D, but the 3D is not that good, and it's actually kind of obnoxious. This film does it in a very, very obnoxious way, and it's just, oh god, doesn't do anyone any favours. And this 3D, I mean, I didn't see it when it came out, but this 3D looks bad. There's literally a scene where Flynn is looking for his booty, and then he shuffles, and his bum is showing up on the screen. That's what I call great 3D effects right there. Okay, this film is really not that funny. Granted, I did laugh a couple of times thanks to the new characters, and Scrat still being his charming, wacky self. Everything else is cringe. You know, there are jokes about freaking Granny's Precious character, and then there's also jokes about Peaches trying to get along with this other mammoth named Ethan, voiced by Drake. This is one of those films where they emphasise on the how do I put this? Celebrities. Well, not surprised. And even Nicki Minaj is here as well, and it shows this film came out in the summer. It's obviously a very modern, poppy summer flick as well, and and also kind of like the second film. There is so much going on here, but more. I'll try and now narrow them down. Sid, Manny, and Diego try to get back. Captain Gut tries to get revenge on him for destroying his ship, even though it's just ice. Peaches tries to get the hots for Ethan, and his friend Lewis, voiced by pre-frozen Josh Gad. Just says that you should just be yourself. Ellie's just trying to get the rest of the animals to safety. Granny's just looking for a frickin' pet whales. Precious and Sierra and Diego might have a love thing, and Scrat, well, is just doing what he usually does. Need I say more? You see what I mean? There's too much going on. If you just stuck to just two things, then it would have been fine. But here it's like, look, if it was just them trying to get back and Captain Gut's always on their tail, that would have been just okay. But if you include more, it just gets more confusing, more juvenile, and more forgettable. The stuff with Scrat is still hilarious, and it's wildly creative and fun. Hell, even like when he goes to Scratlantis, and Patrick Stewart actually voices like the main Scrat squirrel, and I was pleasantly surprised to see and hear Patrick Stewart in the Blue Sky film. He was pretty great, and Scrat's stuff is great as usual. The stuff with the pirates is interesting, and the thing that really boggles me as well, like Dawn of the Dinosaurs, this could really work as its own thing. Hell, they even got freaking Nick Frost here, so Simon Pegg and Nick Frost can team up again. So I'm gonna explain my idea again. But if Buck had a sequel to his first film with dinosaurs, he could have a sequel fighting off against Captain Gut and his pirates, and then Flynn, who's voiced by Nick Frost, could join him. How cool would that be? If it had nothing to do with Ice Age, how freaking cool would that be? That would be so cool. And the stuff with the pirates is actually a lot of fun, and I wish there was more of it, just like Buck in the Dinosaur World. But everything else is just... There's a subplot where Shira joins the herd, and it's supposed to be like Diego's love interest, but their chemistry is very little, and you don't see much of them interacting. It's like... I don't remember her being in the film for that long as well, so she's pointless, really pointless. Same can also be said about Granny, who's just there to make comedy until the end, though. The film's very predictable, and it's obviously just another run-of-the-mill animated kids film sequel we've seen before. Everyone comes together for the big climax, the villain's defeated, and everything makes up. So, for example, like when people mention this and that, what they're good at, they bring it in again to defeat the big villain, which is called foreshadowing. We've seen this to death, and this film just does it in the most basic, most boring way possible. Granted, the third act is kind of where the film gets epic, and I'm not implying their next film really, but honestly, this film's just kind of a slog to get through. There are a few funny moments, sure, and the visual slapstick gags are funny as usual, but not many. Mostly it's just noise, cringy jokes, and just annoying humour. It tries to be dramatic, but it just doesn't work. Oh no, he gets separated. Jeez, I wonder if he'll get back to Ellie and Peaches. I hate when films just repeat these same plots, and hell, this is kind of similar to frickin'. Well, I mean, in a way, to Ice Age 2, because the world's collapsing, and what they have to do? Get back. Unlike the second one, where it had two predators, this one has pirates, because why not? It clearly shows that Blue Sky and the directors of this film has ran out of ideas when it comes to finding a good story for an Ice Age sequel. And the thing is, why did we need an Ice Age sequel? Another one, a fourth, the third sequel and the fourth film. Why do we need more? Isn't 3 enough? It's predictable, not funny at all, it's not epic, it's bland, boring, dull, even more unfunny, and just kind of a slog, really, and it's very kiddie too, it's a very kiddie film. So it shows that after 3 they're like, yeah, we'll just do whatever the fuck we want, but yeah, at this point they've just lost their fucking shit and just made a sequel because money. Literally. Animation. One of the few positives I can give this film is that the animation is pretty fucking beautiful. I'm not joking, it really is. It's a really gorgeous film. The animation improves from Dawn of the Dinosaurs even more. The new characters look pretty cool. Captain Gut looks amazing. I love the look of the crewmates. They all look quite menacing and cartoony, but also pretty cool as well. And by the way, did anyone notice a certain familiar knife that one of the pirates have? Well, if you've seen Ice Age 3, you'll know why. The backgrounds look gorgeous and lifelike. The fur textures on the mammoth, like Manny, Ellie, and Peaches, look great. And the character animation, especially on Sid, is really cartoony, really wacky, but looks convincing. The movements are great. The effects look grand. It's epic. It's big. It's a great looking film. But at the same time, it tries a bit too hard to be cartoony. I mean, it works most of the time, but sometimes it's like, it tries a little too hard. But at the same time, I can't say too much about the animation. It just works for what it is, really. I would say it's the best looking, but hey, we haven't got to the 5th film yet, and that's something we're going to look upon. But enough said. Enough said. This is still a wonderful looking film that continues to get better and better and better. Characters and acting. Right, if there's one thing that I must get out of the way first, is that the new characters are, well, most of them are actually pretty good. Captain Gut's my favourite character here, and he's the second best villain. Soto's still the best one, but Captain Gut, he's really funny, really menacing, really threatening, and a pretty cool villain. Sure, he's not exactly smart and he is kind of dumb, but he is a lot of fun to watch. Same with his crew, especially Flynn, who's voiced by, again, Nick Frost. And he's actually also funny thanks to Nick Frost. I just wish Buck was there, and then the Cornetto trilogy crossover with Ice Age would be complete. And it really, really works. I love these two characters. They're lots of fun, and the rest of the crew have unique humour and personality, and they're fine as well. Raz is good. I like what's his name? Hang on. Gupta as well. All of them are great. Shira's fine. She's a okay love interest, but her chemistry and personality is not enough, and she's not even in the film for too long as I would have thought. She just doesn't do much in this film. It's strange. Her chemistry with Diego is fine, but it could have been better. But she, there isn't much to it, but just eh. Um, you've also got Ethan, who's the Drake Mammoth. You got Steffi as well, and Katie. I believe that she's a mammoth too, and they're just basically the popular mammoths. Even though I don't remember them being in the film before, unless they're new from the unless they've been found by the main characters. Um, but they're not interesting. They're just typical freaking you know teenage mammoths that aren't interesting but just annoying. Lewis, who's another new character, is just okay. Peaches is quite obnoxiously girly in my mind, really. And then you've got Squint, who's voiced by Aziz Ansari. He's pretty entertaining as one of the more hyper pirates of the group. I'd say, I suppose. Um, I can't think of who else was in the film because there's too many characters. Um, Granny, yeah. Granny is a little funny, but she's just mainly very annoying and doesn't do much. Also, the characters that we know from the previous films also don't really seem to do much either. They're either just there because they existed before, or because they're just important to the plot, but they don't impact that much really, or whatever they do impact is stupid. I'll put it that way, really. Manny's actually more obnoxious than before. Sid is not as funny as he used to be. Diego's just kind of the same, really. Ellie doesn't do much. The possums went from not that annoying in the last film to even more annoying in this film. And even bloody Sid's family makes a brief appearance, and then they just go. Things just happen. The voice acting in the film is pretty good, and it does make up for how shit most of these characters are. Peter Dinklage is very, very, very wonderful as Captain Gut. I thought he was legit great as well. Um, Nick Frost as Flynn is perfectly witty and naive and dumb as well. The rest of the cast as well, like Nicki Minaj, Drake, I'm trying to think who else, and even Patrick Stewart, they're pretty good. Nicki Minaj is not too bad, and Drake's very obvious to listen to, am I right? Patrick Stewart's quite good. Rebel Wilson, even though her role as Raz is quite short, she's pretty good. The characters from all the original members from the last film are also pretty good too. Like freaking. I'm trying to think. Ray Romano is fine. Dennis Leary is fine. John Leguizamo is not that entertaining anymore. Queen Latifah's fine also, and the actress who voices Peaches is not that good really. Josh Gad is pretty good in one of his first animated roles just before Frozen, and he's not bad. He's pretty decent. I'll give him that. So yeah, the characters are really just stereotypical one-dimensional tropes. Some of them are entertaining, and the rest are just, yeah. But with some good voice acting, I guess they're just okay enough, I suppose. Once again, the film is scored by John Powell, and it is just as amazing as 2 and 3. Need I say more? And also the song from The Wanted called Chasing the Sun is actually quite catchy. Sure, it's quite modern and it sounds like something you listen to in a disco, but it's better than the We Are song near the end. I will admit, it's very rare to see an animated film with the credit of the actors. Like, in this film, right, you get to see the actors who voice their characters. You get to see them, like, in the recording booth. That's quite cool, and I think the end credits is actually really good. Yeah, this is kind of when things get a bit shit, honestly. Um, Ice Age Continental Drift is not awful. It's just fine for the most part, and it could have been worse. However, the film is just not funny. It's boring, predictably dull. It's childish, modern, cringy. The animation tries too hard. The characters are not that memorable, and also freaking the celebrity voices, although good, are very distracting. I'll put it that way. So it's not quite the worst of Blue Sky. It's not as bad as, well, you'll see next. But it's not that good. But Scratch stuff is still funny. The animation is very pleasant to look at. It's a bit funny, and the pirates are cool, and the music's good, and the voice acting's kind of ace. But yeah, didn't like it. I'll give it. I think I gave it a 6 last time. But it's gonna go pretty much lower to about maybe 5.8. It's not good or bad. It's mostly just kind of meh. Not a film I'd be angry at, but one I felt very underwhelmed by. But trust me, all that anger and hatred isn't quite as bad as the next film, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm going to be talking about Ice Age 5 Collision Course. Let's get this over with. And so we come down to the fifth and hopefully last Ice Age film. Ice Age Collision Course. The fifth film and the fourth sequel in the Ice Age series. This came out in 2016, and pretty much like Dawn of the Dinosaurs, I did see this in cinemas. And you'd be very surprised because this film has too many early previews, which basically means you can watch the film for 1 or 2 days before its official release. And this film has like what, 6 days of release? I know it came out in July. I can't remember what the date was. 15th. I think it came out on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th. Did they really need to release that many for a film like this? Anyway, so I did see this when it came out, and I never saw it ever since. And everyone pretty much says this is the worst one, and yes, I actually agree. But has my opinion changed on this film? Well, let's take a look. And bear with me, because there's a lot to get through here, and then just bear with me. Okay, so Scrat's back, trying to find a place to place his acorn, and he accidentally activates a UFO, and then once he's in the UFO, he accidentally brings an asteroid to Earth. And so our main heroes have to go to the crash site to look for clues to get rid of this asteroid. At the same time, Manny and Ellie are concerned about Peaches, who is now grown up and is with another mammoth named Julian, who's voiced by Adam Devine, and they're worried that she'll probably go off with Julian somewhere, and Manny's just concerned about her. Sid is pretty much just looking for love. Buck, voiced by Simon Pegg, returns, which instantly... hey, I've got to have some bright spots here. After he's getting chased by these dino birds led by Gavin, who's voiced by Nick Offerman, I can't say his name in his accent. Nick Offerman. That's the best Nick Offerman impression I ever done. And his son, Roger, voiced by Max Greenfield. and I think everyone's called Gertie, who's voiced by, oh, I forgot her name. She's from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Stephanie Beatrice from the Lego Movie 2 as General Sweet Mayhem. And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, they go. That's not. Diego's there and Shiro, voiced once again by J-Lo's there as well. Granny's here, voiced once again by Wanda Sykes is there, and then they come across some new characters, and oh, where do I start? First off, this film is pretty much just like the rest of the Ice Age sequels, with the exception of maybe the third one. There's too much going on. This film is about 20% funny, and the rest is either cringy, loud, obnoxious, too energized, and too modern. There's jokes about butts. There's even a joke about hashtags, which, I mean, how the fuck do these prehistoric animals know what fucking hashtags are? The slapstick, although very amusing and very energized, does get very annoying and very repeated fast. There's lots of screaming. There's lots of like visual gags that represents like historical moments and modern stuff as well, which instantly gets old fast. The humour of this film is bad. This is the most unfunniest Blue Sky film out there, and that's saying something, since Ferdinand, a film that I thought was pretty good, was annoying about halfway through thanks to one little goat. And to be honest, that film is a little similar to this, but I can tolerate Ferdinand. This, however, this was unbearable, and I get it. It's a kids' film, and it's like, oh, you shouldn't be complaining about it. It's just a kids' film, Just because it's a kids' film doesn't mean it can get away with stuff like this. When I think of kids' films, I think of Pixar and Disney when they give us all these wonderful and unforgettable adventures and great humour and deep emotions. This is just like any generic, modern, mediocrely juvenile animated sequels. At times it reminded me of Rio 2, and Rio 2 I thought was alright. I'd rather much watch that than this. And also, there's too much going on. If you just stuck to just saving the world and the whole Scrat thing just as a short, and hell, there was actually a short for this film, I think came with the DVD, called Scrat Out or something, Spaced Out. Basically, Scrat's in space and he's trying to get the acorn, and just like the other films, he is pretty much one of the few genuinely funny parts of the film. But sometimes the humour can go a little bit too far. Again, there's humour with butts. And while Scrat stuff is very funny and highly amusing, it's not as funny as it was before. Buck returns, and he's been chased by these three dino birds who, again, if this was just a separate thing with Buck and the dinosaurs, the pirates, dino birds and the pirates and the freaking dinosaurs, I think this would have been okay, because I want to know more about these dinosaur birds, but all they're there is just to kill the weasel. And my only assumption is that Buck always stops them, like they're criminals or something. And we briefly get to see the underground dinosaur world, and there's one Figaro scene. You've seen it when Buck does Figaro music while stopping these dino birds stealing an egg. That is actually my favourite scene in the film, because not only is Buck back, but also we get to see the dinosaur world, and it's like, I want to see more of that. Why couldn't Buck have his separate film series or something? But no, it's all jam-packed into this. The other plots are really nothing that interesting, really. A whole freaking love modern family business about Manny deciding whether he should like Julian and let Peaches go or anything, and trying to sabotage their relationship and trying to act all hip and cool. This reminded me so much of Shrek, especially Shrek 3. And that's a weird coincidence, because the three main characters are like Shrek. Shrek, Manny, Donkey, Sid, Puss in Boots, and Diego. You see the similarities here. When the film does get action-packed, it's just like what we've seen before, but it is still amusing. And I'll be very honest, this film didn't bore me or anything. It just made me a bit. I mean, I did yawn a few times as well, and the film just got on my nerves very quickly. There weren't many moments where it just slowed down. It was like whoosh, 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 kept going. There's also a scene that involves a character getting eaten, and then they see a light at the end of the tunnel, which means someone's bumhole. Does this director have a thing for bums? Freaking Mike Fromaya. What is it with you in butt jokes? Toilet humour, butt humour, burp humour, modern humour, reference humour is not funny unless it's done well. But in here they play Crazy in Love, Dreamweaver, which do they even know what the fuck those songs are? If it's supposed to be like a modern prehistoric life, then they don't really establish it well. They really don't. And also the film, just like the other ones, is very, 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 very predictable. But this is like you can tell what's going to happen. At one point, Julian says, "Oh, you know," or no, Peaches was saying, "You're like, oh, we're never gonna make it through." It's like this is a fucking Blue Sky sequel film. It's a kids' film. What the hell do you expect? I really haven't got much else to say, but this is just aggravating. I get it if they wanted to make another Ice Age film, but here's the thing: this didn't need to exist. There was This is just kind of wasted potential. If there was like a short of Buck escaping from these dino beds, I think that would have been better off as its own thing. Same with Scrat as well. He's not even in the film for that long, which bothers me as well. And even when he's on screen, it can be funny, but mostly just painful. At this point, the franchise has just lost its ideas and just became your very average, run-of-the-mill animated sequel. It's not that funny. It's boring, dull, just cringily aggravating, and just a slog to get through. At least the fourth one was kind of interesting, at least, but this is just bottom of the barrel bad. If they make a sixth one, then I highly doubt anything's going to beat this piece of crap of a story. There's nothing wrong with having too much going on as long as it's well established, but here, too much going on, too much humour. I just can't get my head around it. It's too annoying, and it really shows why there shouldn't be another Ice Age film, because they've lost the bat. They've gone drunk, and it's like, let's put all this together. Too much means too much. Simple as that. Animation. Okay, as much as I bash the story, the animation is actually the best thing about the film. It's probably the best animation Blue Sky has produced, with Spies in Disguise second. The animation here continues to improve, and it looks fantastic. It really does. The animation is the only big positive I can give the film as well so far. I love just like the last film. I love the cartoony slapstick style, Scrat's movements, and even his facial expressions. And even the most very strange and very just kind of wacky moments really works. I think it really scarily works as a very cartoony film. And when there's like squash and stretch and characters get their necks stuck and all tangled, it works. It's a very well animated cartoon film. And the new characters look quite cool too, like the Dino Birds and the Geotopian citizens. Like, they all look creative and cool, and even Geotopia looks beautiful. So there are so many ideas in this film that really works. And Buck, being the great weasel of all time, still looks wonderful in his style of animation, humour and slapstick. It really works, and this is a genuinely wonderful animated film. This is the best animation from Blue Sky and in the franchise. However, there's only one little thing that bothers me. As much as I love the slapstick, cartoony, wacky humour, some of the imagery can be a little bit strange, a little bit creepy too. Where there's a scene where Scrat tries to get his acorn, and then I think he like lowers the temperature down or something, and then you get to see his like freaking the inside of him. Like, you can see his bones and all that, and his skull, which is like the film gets uncomfortably creepy and a little bit too far. And not in a good way, just more in a very unpleasant way. And just like other slapstick humour as well does get a little bit too annoying fast. Some of it's good, but the rest is legit too much. But besides that, the animation once again proves that Blue Sky can animate their films really well, and this is no exception. Although it's not perfect, I think it is the best animation from them of all time, and in the franchise also. Characters and acting. Okay, the big problem with the characters is that there is fucking too many. You could have just removed a few and it wouldn't make the film any different. Hell, they don't even do much really. Diego and Shira, they barely do anything. Sid's just kind of the goofy, lovable comic relief. Manny's actually more unlikable here than he was in the last film. And to the film's credit, those three still have good line deliveries, and I mean, the chemistry in the film's not too much, but we know how they are in the other films as well. But at the same time, they're just kind of, they all become like one big character, just all the same and kind of unfunny too. Granny's still pretty annoying. Crash and Eddie are like the most annoying they've ever been. Ellie's just kind of there just to support Manny. Peaches is more annoying. Julian, the new character, is really annoying. So most of the characters are either just not that interesting or kind of unnecessary and kind of annoying too. Buck's back in the film, and even though he doesn't save the film, he is still as funny as he was in the third film. Although not as great in that film, his style of humour and Simon Pegg's performance really does make this film somewhat tolerable and watchable. And he is probably the best character in the film. Scrat's still mostly funny for the most part. The Dino Birds, although they're quite dumb as villains, they are pretty funny and highly entertaining, and kind of like the story with them trying to eat Buck. I wanted to see more of that and the dinosaur world, and then them trying to catch him and stop the media from, well, trying to get the media to hit Earth, but apparently they'll live because they're birds, even though that's not true. They're dumb, but still funny. The Geotopian citizens are also just, they kind of blend in at being annoying. This Shangri-Lama character, get it, Shangri-Lama, voiced by Jesse Tyler Ferguson, yeah. He's very annoying too, and he's really just a very noisy, whiny llama. Jessie J voices a character named Brooke, and she's the love interest basically for Sid. And although I think Jessie J's performance is just okay, I thought she was rather charming, and I'm happy that Sid got his happy ending. Also, spoilers, he gets with Brooke in the end. And honestly, if you're like, oh, stop spoiling, it's a fucking Ice Age sequel. What the hell did you expect? God almighty. God. Too many. There's also other minor characters. There's like Francine, voiced by Melissa Roach from The Big Bang Theory fame, and other minor characters are just there, and that's it. The voice acting's honestly nothing good, really. Don't get me wrong, they did. The actors do sound like they were having fun, to be fair, but honestly, they just sound like they were very tired. Simon Pegg is really great here. He's my favourite performance in the film, and not because he's my favourite actor, or one of my favourite actors, but he really does steal the show once again, and he is still funny, and I love Simon Pegg. Nick I can't say his name again. Nick Offerman. I can't even say his own name while doing an impression of Nick Offerman. Nick Offerman. There we go. Is really good as always. He's in lots of animated stuff. He's in Sing. He's in Gravity Falls as well. He and the Lego Movie as well. He's pretty great here. Same with Max Greenfield and Stephanie Beatrice. All three of them have great comedic timing, and I just wanted to see more of them. I thought they were actually pretty funny. Jessie J is just okay. She just sounds like your typical pop star celebrity voicing a character like J-Lo. J-Lo's actually done it before, and she's actually good. And in here, she's fine, even though she's quite pointless also. Dennis Leary is good, and again, doesn't really contribute too much. John Leguizamo is fine, and again, he's not in it for long, and he doesn't even do much. Ray Romano's fine. Most of the acting is fine, with a couple of standouts. And there's nothing wrong with their performances, they just sound like they're trying either too hard or they're just bored. The characters come to a point where there's too many annoying characters, too many unnecessary characters, and too many unfunny characters. But with a couple of standouts, it's not too bad, but at the same time, maybe, I don't know, maybe a few characters should have been left behind. Diego Shearer definitely. Sid, I think, would have been fine if he came with them. Crashing Eddie, definitely. Guys, there's a difference between having good characters that aren't many, so you can focus on them, and then there's too many that have too much focus and it's all jumbled up. But with some decent voice acting, they're not the worst, but you could have got rid of some and it would have made a bigger difference, or not. I mean, I don't care really. The score of the film is not by John Powell, sadly. However, it's by John Debney, who does a lot of animated / family film scores, and he's kind of overused as a composer, but his score here, while it's no John Powell, is still quite nice and relaxing and very cartoony, and I quite like it. Yeah, I still really kind of actively don't like this film. I didn't like the fourth film, but this was kind of much worse. Ice Age Collision Course, I think we can all agree it's the worst out of all of the Ice Age films. It's not funny anymore. The film, kind of like Hotel Transylvania, but less good, loses its charm. The animation gets too cartoony, and it kind of makes you a bit exhausted and a bit tired. The characters are either pointless, not funny, or annoying, and it's just another predictable run-of-the-mill animated sequel. However, the animation of the film is really beautiful, and it is the best that this series and the studio has done. Well, I mean, they're shutting down, obviously, but you know what I mean. The best they've done. Buck's still funny. Scrat is still amusing enough, and some of the new characters are actually more funnier and entertaining than the newer ones as well. Some of the old characters are there, and it's like, it's good to see them again, but they don't contribute too much as well. And I did laugh about 3 or 4 times, I think, but most of the time I was annoyed as well. But yeah, I genuinely don't like this film. Is it worse than like the EMOGI movie? No, I would rather watch this than that and frickin' Playmobil 2. This is on par with frickin' Ugly Dolls, and if you're wondering which film I would rather watch, this might sound rather insane, but I'd much rather watch this than Ugly Dolls. Ugly Dolls was just mediocre bad. This was more bad, but there are good things in it, but it's just kind of Buck's in it and these other characters, and it looks beautiful too, so there are a few things that I like, but unfortunately it doesn't quite save this film, and there's so much wasted potential here. But hey, I think even though Blue Sky is shut down, I think there's going to be a TV series for Buck, which I'm all up for. Okay, so last time with this film, I think I gave it a 3.4. I'm going to go up a little bit and say 3. So I gave it a 3.4. So I'm going to go up a little bit and say 3.6. Genuinely do not like this film at all. Just not the worst, but pretty bad. The worst Ice Age film and the worst Blue Sky film. I think we could all agree to that. And I hope that's the end of this franchise. And there we go. That's all the Ice Age sequels. The Ice Age franchise has kind of left a bit of a memorable impact on me. None of these films will beat the first film, hell no, but they do have something rather unique and creative about them. The second film was quite nice and quite nice to look at and pretty epic. The third film I thought had a lot of ideas which could have worked without Ice Age. Fourth film is just kind of same thing. Fifth film, even less so. But hey, at least they have something that I can enjoy, even if it's not too much. So there you go. That's all the Ice Age sequels. God, that was that was a lot to get through. So next up, I'm going to be talking about the Tom and Jerry movie on Friday, which hopefully will be not as bad as Ice Age 5, which I highly doubt. But yeah, if you have seen the Ice Age franchise, all the sequels, or all of it actually, first film even, what do you think about them? Are they good, bad, decent? Do you want to see them? Let me know below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. And until next time, insert scrat scream here. I can't do his scream, but you know what I mean.